Courage and honor, cousin.
Into the fires of battle, unto the anvil of war.
Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zekthar,
And I'm Yuxin.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this week, we'll be talking about the strange, perhaps renegade, Space Marine chapter known as the Soul Drinkers.
Right on, Zekthar. I have been wanting to talk about these guys for a while.
Mhm.
They have an interesting story that needs to be told.
Indeed.
So the Soul Drinkers are, to the best of our knowledge, a second or third founding of the Imperial Fist. From all extensive purposes, the Soul Drinkers are mentioned as a second founding, being formed primarily from the remaining fleet-based shock attack elements of the Imperial Fist Legion. Of course, some claim that they aren't Imperial Fist successors at all. All of these wonderful murky things we shall discuss later on when you, Zekthar, discuss their trial with Lysander. But one claim we can definitely disregard is the claim that they were part of the Fourth Founding. We can disregard this because they are emphatically recorded as participating in the War of the Beast, which was prior to the Fourth Founding. After having participated in the War of the Beast, they were involved in the War of Apostasy, and in 378.M36 assisted the Black Templars' assault on Terra. The crusade ended with the death of Van Dier at the hands of one of his former bodyguards, Alicia Dominica, the founder and future patron imperial saint of the Adeptus Sororitas. The Soul Drinkers also had many notable victories on other worlds against Xenos races such as the Eldari during this era. After this, there are no records until the tragic chapter wars. Would you mind telling us about those, brother?
Certainly. Before we carry on, so we have talked about, the Imperial Fists. You did some short boxes on the Crimson Fist, correct?
Yes.
And we've talked at length, anyways, about the Black Templars multiple times because they were also very key in the War of Armageddon. But we have bounced back and forth, anyways. And we have kind of brought up the Soul Drinkers because all these guys that we're just talking about right now are either the first founding of the Imperial Fist or part of the second founding. And every time that we talk about the second founding, there's always this mysterious Soul Drinkers that pops up. Now, here's the quick question, Yuxi. Before I continue on with the Soul Drinkers, can you name the other four second foundings?
Well, other than
we've already kind of mentioned a couple of them. But
yeah, Black Templars and the Crimson Fists.
Which the Black Templars were, their first chapter master was Sigismund. And the Imperial Fist was your favorite guy of the Imperial Fist, which is Alexis Pollux.
Yes. Then there was the Fifth Exemplar.
Right? Which was run by Auriax Dentilian. He's the guy who actually convinced Dorn to split up the Legion and be into chapters.
And then the last one of the ones is the Excoriators. Is that how it's pronounced?
Correct.
I believe.
Yep. And that is good pronunciation. And their chapter master was Demetrius Catafalque. Now, there was, if I recall right, what were the Iron Warrior? No, not Iron Warriors. The Iron Knights, I want to say.
Yeah, which we have no idea what founding they were, but
it's under suspicion that they might have also been. But those are the ones, anyways, that are emphatically part of the second founding.
Yes.
But moving on, things started to go downhill for the Soul Drinkers around M41 when they tried to obtain a long-lost relic artifact known as the Soul Spear.
The Soul Spear, you say?
I did, indeed, yes. The Soul Spear is an arcane device that Rogel Dorn supposedly wielded himself. It was entrusted to the Soul Drinkers chapter when the Imperial Fist Legion was split at the time of the second founding. Yet again, this is a lot of the lore that we're going to talk about, a lot of them will mention them as the second founding. But what's key about them being part of the second founding, or maybe not being part of the second founding, is actually towards the very end of their saga when they're put on trial by Lysander, which I will be getting to here in a bit. But the blade of the Soul Spear was as long as a man's forearm. glossy black, and inlaid with intricate circuitry that shifted and changed before the eye. There were smooth indentations where fingers far larger than a normal man's would fit, each one with a laser needle surrounded by a ring of gene-sensitive psychoplastic. According to the legends of the chapter, only a scion of Rogel Dorn could activate the power of the Soul Spear and wield it successfully in battle. Like I said, a lot of this, keep in mind for later. Anyways, at some point circa M40, the Soul Spear was on board the Soul Drinker's flagship, the Sanctifier, when the ship was lost in a failed warp jump. The spear was lost over 1,000 years before the chapter discovered its whereabouts on an old derelict star fort. Upon invading the star fort and interrogating its owners, the Soul Drinkers made their way to the treasure vault in which the Soul Spear was kept, where it was stolen from their grasp by the Adeptus Mechanicus. The forces of the Mechanicus were ostensibly assisting the Adeptus Ministorum, but in actuality wanted to obtain the Soul Spear for themselves, so that they might examine and possibly reverse engineer its ancient technology. The stand-up
doesn't sound anything like the Adeptus Mechanicus at all. It's a shiny object. It's ours. We must study it for research.
Apparently, it's logical to have a lizard brain. Ah, it's mine, I want it! It's only logical. No, it's not. Anyways. The standoff between the Soul Drinkers and the other Imperial forces ended with the destruction of the Mechanicus star fort Laconia, and major damage to several starships of the Adeptus Ministorum and the Adeptus Mechanicus, which in turn caused the Soul Drinkers to be labeled excommunicate traitores by the Inquisition. Now, what became of the Soul Spear is the thief, one Archmagos Kabutov, had the Soul Spear transported to the Forge world he operated on, Coden Tertius. Once there, he tasked the tech priest Sasha Koroloth with unlocking its secrets. According to Koroloth's research, the output and effect of the weapon's discharge was capable to that of a vortex missile, albeit more controlled. Eventually, Koroloth and her team of acolytes were able to bypass the weapon's gene locks and test fire. The resulting explosion destroyed Koroloth's laboratory and killed 2 of the personnel working there. Koroloth would then go on to steal the Soul Spear for herself. Now, if you're wondering what happened to the spear after this, don't worry, it pops up again. But let's get back to the Soul Drinkers. The remaining Soul Drinkers retreated in their strike cruiser to an asteroid field where they were beset by the combined fleets of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Ministorum, until the Soul Drinkers' fleet, led by Chapter Master Gorgelion, arrived by warp route 931-C that had been closed for 600 standard years prior to the incident. After the Soul Drinkers chapter fleet linked up with the survivors of the Soul Drinkers' assault on the Star Fort, Chapter Master Gorgelion told his fellow Soul Drinker Captain Sarpedon of an offer the Inquisition had made, which required the deaths of the Space Marines involved in the Laconia incident in exchange for a reprieve. Gorgelion explained that he had refused this offer on a basis that the only person fit to judge a Soul Drinker was another Soul Drinker. This judgment would require Sarpedon to face Gorgelion himself in a ritual duel to the death, known as the Shield Rites, to determine the righteousness of Sarpedon's action on Laconia. During the height of the duel, Sarpedon seemed to be affected by some outside power and spontaneously grew 8 arachnoid legs, giving him a crucial advantage over Gorgelion and enabling him to tear his erstwhile commander to pieces, and so claim the mantle of Chapter Master for himself. Although he did not know it at the time, his mutation was caused by the corrupting powers and influence of the Chaos God Zinch, who intended to make the Soul Drinkers yet another one of his countless pawns in Chaos's long war against the Imperium. After a brief but bloody struggle with those who could not accept his mutation, and those who still believed that Sarpedon was uncorrupted.
But he was corrupted. He grew 8 spider legs. If that isn't mutation, then I don't know what is. Mind you, they may be talking about his soul being corrupted or uncorrupted. Maybe that's what they meant, right?
Well, I think so. That's the weird part is that, so normally anyways, when somebody gets mutated this badly, like they start growing arms and whatnot, normally their brain's already gone. It's already Hail Zinch or Korn or whoever.
The exception, of course, being the Thousand Sons, because they weren't all worshippers.
Who do they follow again? Zinch.
Before they even followed Zench, they had the defect anyways.
It actually had its own name to it, didn't it? It was, what was it called?
The Changing or something
Changing or something like that. A really original name, yes. But yeah, but at this point anyways in history, if you're going to start growing legs and whatnot that's chaos infused, you're normally already following some sort of chaos god. So this does kind of beg the question anyways, you bring up a good point anyways with Magnus's guys before the Horus Heresy. Can you think of anybody else anyways, though, that has been so chaos mutated that hasn't followed chaos?
Not right offhand. Though, this guy I don't think actually is. But we'll find out later.
Is what?
Right. That his soul wasn't actually corrupted, I don't think.
At this point anyways, he's not following chaos.
Oh, yeah. No.
Which, like I said anyways, is very bizarre. I mean, this is other than like you said, Magnus's guys from way back during the Horus Heresy. Neither of us could really think of somebody that this occurred to. Maybe someone from the Inquisition, a radical inquisitor. That's the only other thing I can really think of.
At the same time, this sort of has a feel of the Changing, though, how it just randomly happens when somebody isn't praying to the god or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but. Anyway,
moving on, right?
Yes. Regardless of what we think, Sarpedon became the new leader of the Soul Drinkers chapter from that point on. Despite the rejection by the Imperium Man itself as an utterly corrupt institution, the Soul Drinkers remained steadfastly loyal to the Emperor of Mankind, even after they had been exposed to the raw power of chaos. This exposure subsequently began to manifest mutations in the chapter's other Space Marines. Sarpedon then scuttled the Soul Drinkers' fleet and resettled the chapter into a space hope they dubbed the Broken Back. Soon after, the demon prince Abraxas misled the Soul Drinkers into attacking one of his rivals, the Nurgle demon Prince Vemeth.
Translate to the Meth.
Yeah. After slaying Vemeth, who took the form of a virus infesting several hundred ordinary people, Abraxas revealed his true nature. He handed Sarpedon the Soul Spear and offered the Soul Drinkers the chance to serve as his personal retinue of Chaos Space Marines. Though Sarpedon considered his options, he ultimately refused, attacking Abraxas and his demons and slaying them. But, after some time, the chapter apothecary Paulus managed to stop the spread of the new mutations, and also to halt the progression of mutation in those Astartes already afflicted, thanks to the retrieval of information held on the planetoid Stratix Lumina.
Boy, that would have helped Magnus back in the day, wouldn't it? Mentioning the Changing.
Thinking the same thing. What if they only just had that information? What would happen if they'd actually found this information back in the day?
Yeah.
Just a question for you anyways. If they had figured this out during the 30th millennium, and Magnus had happened to figure this out, what do you think would have happened? Do you think it would have gone down the same way?
Probably not.
Because I'm thinking anyways, one of the big pushes for the Council of Nicaea was Lehman Russ. Especially after that whole incident anyways with the bird warriors and the mutation started to take place and Magnus was trying to help his boy out and Lehman just shot him in the face. Which almost made the Thousand Suns and the Space Wolves come to blows.
Was ironically stopped by Lorgar.
Of all people, yeah.
Of all people.
But, so if there wasn't as much of that push anyways by Lehman Russ, because at that point anyways, Magnus wouldn't have been able to... Lehman might have still pushed
Magnus wouldn't have even made a deal with Zench to begin with.
That's a good point.
He had the information. So...
Well, that's another thing that doesn't make any sense to me, is that he makes a deal with Zench, right? So he can stop the changing, or whatever they call it. And then it works for a while. And then it starts happening again. So why on earth would Magnus ever trust Zench again? It didn't work. He had to give up an eyeball for that.
it, well, to be fair, it didn't happen until that one time. Didn't happen again until that one time of,
With Lehman there?
yeah.
I thought it
with
had
Lehman.
actually. There was a couple of times it had happened before. It wasn't happening as often. And quite frankly, anyways, it could also just be happening because they were still tapping into the warp. But
Yeah, that might have been the other thing that Magnus was taking into consideration. Is like, well, they're going to full-blown mutation like they have in the past. More probably because we're dabbling a bit here and there. Where we should
that
have
also might also be why it wouldn't have worked for actually Magnus, what they found, because as far as I know anyways, soul drinkers aren't really super psyker dudes. They're just kind of your average space marine. I'm sure they have a couple of psychers, librarians, but nothing,
Yeah.
Compared to the Thousand Suns where every single one of them was. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting. But getting back to the soul drinkers. This information unfortunately came at the price of the soul drinkers being forced to abandon Sergeant Telos and his cadre of assault marines as they made their escape from the planetoid. Though Telos and his squad turned to the service of Chaos completely to save themselves. Chapter Master Sarpedon quickly caught wind of this heresy by his battle brothers and tracked Telos to Anamine 4, an Imperial world held by a mysterious alliance of Dark Eldar and Slaneshi cultists.
Huh?
I'm getting there. The Imperial Guard, with the assistance of the Crimson Fist, were at the moment trying to liberate the world.
Strange. Normally you would find the Crimson Fist fighting an enemy with a little more green in them.
True, but I guess they were filling in for the Salamanders that day. The Crimson Fist force was initially small, serving as a spearhead for the array of Imperial Guard regiments attempting to retake the capital city of Gravenhold. However, they quickly fell afoul of Telos' soul drinkers, clashing indecisively as the Fist took up overwatch positions in the cathedral. In the aftermath, recognizing the Chalice emblem and believing the entire Soul Drinkers chapter present, Crimson Fist Commander Renez sent word of the Soul Drinkers' presence to Rinsworld, who responded with the Fist's second company under Chaplain Nhuka, placing himself and the company under Renez's command with order to destroy the Soul Drinkers and bring back Chief Librarian Sarpedon's head. Okay, that's actually kind of interesting. That kind of makes sense anyways why he ended up growing 8 legs. The whole, being kind of attached to the warp, being a librarian. Yeah. Well, that also makes sense anyway, so the whole fact that they're being able to walk back the mutations, as far as I know, Sarpedon, his mutations never get walked back. He carries on having 8 arachnid legs.
But at least he doesn't continue to mutate, though.
True.
He doesn't all of a sudden get any antennas or a few extra eyes, or...
So maybe with librarians, they could stop the mutations, but they couldn't walk it back like they did with the rest of the chapter.
Well, according to this, they weren't able to walk it back. They were just able to stop it from continuing, I believe, is the way it's worded.
And to stop the spread of new mutations, also halt the progression of mutations. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, good point. I just kind of read that anyways, is that they were able to walk it back, but I guess not. Anyways, upon the arrival in Temion 4, Sarpedon's Soul Drinkers immediately began investigating the situation. Their method of infiltrating the world, hijacking a pair of landers from the Imperial Navy, quickly alerted the Crimson Fist as to their location. After securing the assistance of the Armored Fist units of the Fornukes, Lix Fire Drake's regiment, the Crimson Fist dove deep into the city and fought the Soul Drinkers in brutal brawl within the city's mercantile chamber. The Soul Drinkers pulled back after capturing the Fist Company standard and killing the company librarian. Throughout this fight, the Dark Eldar present on the world observed the Soul Drinkers fighting against the Loyalist forces. The intervention of the brainwashed slave army of the Drukhari deterred the Crimson Fist pursuit as the Soul Drinkers retreated beneath the city. The Soul Drinkers were quickly approached by the Drukhari, who, clearly bearing betrayal in mind, offered Sarpedon an alliance, which Sarpedon, also planning a wee bit of betrayal, accepted. Just
At
don't
this
turn your
point, we
back
can
on me, lady.
establish that Sarpedon was still on
Okay.
the side of the Imperium. Is my viewpoint here? That plus, they had fought Eldari and other Xenos in the past, so they probably knew that the Drukhari were going to be full of it and try to backstab them anyways.
Okay, at this point, anyways, I want to make a mention of something here, anyways. While they still, anyways, say that they fight for the Imperium, they're not great dudes either.
Well, no.
They're kind of up there to me, anyways, with like the Marines Malevolent. Kind of. I don't know, man. I mean, they literally killed anyway. They took the Crimson Fist company standard, and then they killed the Librarian. I mean, that doesn't sound very. Here you go, happy people.
It was killed or be killed here.
Anyways, interested in nothing save finding Telios, Sarpedon split the Soul Drinkers into two parts to blunt the Imperial Guard for the Dark Eldar. All the while, the Soul Drinkers' scouts sought out Telios in the city. The scouts soon located Telios and his retinue as they butchered through a guard regiment, and Chaplain Ectonos and his flock were able to hold them in place long enough for Sarpedon to arrive and defeat Telios, collapsing a span bridge on top of it. Now, ironically, Telios would not die here, but he will shortly. The Dark Eldar still benefited from this, buying time for a secret army of mutated human slaves to fully awaken beneath the city and began a slaughter so great it would propel Antimion IV to the status of Demon World, one ruled by the Drukhari as a second Comara. The Soul Drinkers would ultimately have the last laugh, though, using their scouts to trick the Crimson Fist into attacking the Dark Eldar stronghold on the world, slaying all the Xenos and preventing their plan from reaching fruition. Though prematurely stopped, the whole reality leading into the warp tainted the world beyond hope, and the whole world was destroyed by Exterminatus. See, this is where Telios finally dies. Poor bastard. Yeah, I mean, he was really, he should have been a Lamenter. He just terrible luck. He gets left behind.
Yes,
The only way to survive is to swear your allegiance to Khorne. You get a bridge that falls on you. You live through that, and then the planet itself gets blown up with you on.
Well, you betray your own chapter, and then
part of me doesn't really think that he betrayed his own chapter. It's more like the chapter betrayed him. They left him. I mean,
see, my guess is from the way it was written is more of a you're gonna have to hold it, and he's like, okay, and then the Chaos God came by and says, hey, you know what? I can save you, despite the fact that you would die here.
No, this is more along the lines that they were being overrun, and it was like, Telios is like, well, if we die here, we die with honor. Hey, where are you going? Hey, come back. You can't leave me. I'm a sergeant. He left me with all my guys. That's what it seemed like more to me. But like I said, to me personally anyways, the Soul Drinkers aren't really good guys. I don't think they're necessarily bad guys either. They're definitely not chaos born, but they're not very nice either. They would not be getting along with the Salamanders. Let's put it that way. Anywho, the Soul Drinkers found another chapter war brewing between Sarpedon and the new sergeant, Numenez, taken from a planet that hated the Imperium to restock the chapter. Numenez felt that the fight should be taken directly to the Emperor. He wanted to take out the Astronomicon and blot out the light that guides the Emperor's ships through the warp to start the Imperium over. Sarpedon, however, struck a new course for the chapter after being given advice from Chaplain Ectonos that a planet called Vanquillus was under attack from a horde of orcs and needed their protection. Afterwards, the Soul Drinkers would be able to benefit by taking on supplies for their new home, the Broken Bag. Sarpedon led the Soul Drinkers through the jungles of Vanquillus to battle the orcs, but in his absence, Numenez took control of the Broken Bag and started a coup that included a great deal of forces on the planet. After consolidating, Sarpedon's Soul Drinkers set out to take an old fortress from the rebels. Once there, Librarian Grisk warned Sarpedon to leave. Sarpedon did before Umanus bombarded the land surrounding the fortress from the Broken Back. The Howling Griffins chapter had sent 3 companies under Lord Librarian Marcinio to the world to honor an old debt the chapter owed Vanquillus. The Griffins had also allowed Inquisitor Thaddeus, now disfavored from the Inquisition, to tag along on the suspicions of the Soul Drinkers' involvement. Though he realized that Marcinio didn't comprehend what the Soul Drinkers really were, he could not convince him of this fact. Thaddeus tried to leave the strike cruiser and warn Sarpedon of the Griffins, but had to kill one of the Griffins in close-quarter firefight before he could escape. Marcinio and his Griffins landed shortly thereafter, and did battle with Sarpedon's group while the traitors watched bemusedly from the sidelines. It was during this that Marcinio killed Thaddeus for his killing his battle brother. In the end, Sarpedon could not get off Vanquillus, and conceded to Eminus's wishes. Eminus became the new chapter master. Sarpedon led the loyal Soul Drinkers to Techmarine Ligris, loyal to Sarpedon, but was stuck on the Broken Back until Umanus let him shuttle Sarpedon and his forces back to their ship in time to repel a border attack from the Howling Griffins. Sarpedon and Marcinio engaged in a titanic psychic duel, tiring each other out until Umanus struck down Marcinio from behind and throwing Sarpedon in the brig. Sarpedon then attacked Psyker Latent Scout Scamander in the Broken Back's brig, incapacitating him. Sarpedon then made his way to the bridge, where he dueled Umanus. Though Umanus had both the Soul Spear and Marcinio's Force Axe, Sarpedon impaled him with his mutant legs. Go on. He then addressed the remaining Soul Drinkers' battle brothers, asking if any of them wished to take up the burden of the office of Chapter Master. When none of them responded, Sarpedon declared that he would remain the Chapter Master. And not satisfied with this, at least one squad of the newer Soul Drinkers recruits left the chapter. So that was the chapter wars. What happened to the Soul Drinkers after that, Yuxin?
Well, while they were fleeing from an Adeptus Mechanicus task force, the Soul Drinkers' Space Hulk was severely damaged and low on fuel. Forced to run, the Soul Drinkers went deep into the veiled regions in search of fuel. They ran into the Necrons on many worlds, all with signs of previous human settlement, but now infested with the Undying Xenos. Eventually they discovered the last of the human worlds that the Necrons were still in the process of cleansing, and the Soul Drinkers made a deal with the survivors. They'd allow the humans time to retreat to their spacecraft while they held the Necron forces off in exchange for the Soul Drinkers receiving fuel.
So, pardon me, real quick. But this Broken Back Space Hulk, gotta be pretty cool. Most Space Hulks just kind of, float through space?
Float.
Through the warp. It sounds like this one they can kind of control, which is kind of cool.
They probably, when they scuttled their ships, they probably took some of those rockets and put it on the Space Hulk. And
once again, this sounds worky.
Yeah,
sounds very
worky. It sounds very worky.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The Soul Drinkers held out against the Necrons, and the human population reached their spaceport. But a Necron fleet arrived in system, preventing them from leaving. The Adeptus Mechanicus fleet arrived shortly after, and the two fleets began fighting against each other. It is immediately obvious that the Imperial forces would be destroyed, so they began a complex pattern of maneuvers to delay the inevitable. When the Soul Drinkers realized that they could not beat the approaching Necron force on the ground, and the Mechanicus would lose in space, Sarpedon offered an alliance with the Mechanicus. Chaplain Ictinos and his flock remained behind to help defend the spaceport and the surviving humans. It is revealed that his flock was loyal to his secret master as well, and no longer considered themselves Soul Drinkers, aka they now follow Chaos.
It's a little bit more complicated than that, but yeah, about
the simplified version. This is the simplified
version.
Connected to Chaos. Okay.
It's like that one line from Terran 42's Warcraft 3.
We're not a cult so much as a maniacal group of fanatical blade-wielding zealots.
Right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Accepting the alliance, the Mechanicus and Soul Drinkers set off for the main Necron hub, having planned to destroy the Necron Lord and leave the rest of the enemy forces leaderless. Arriving at the Tomb World, the Mechanicus crashed their ship into the planet and deployed alongside the Soul Drinkers. A long, bloody battle began as they raced to kill the Necron Lord before the Necron's superior numbers began to change the odds. Finally, they arrived at the Necron Lord's location, and Sarpedon dueled with it and kind of won, because in typical Necron fashion, it got back up and began crushing him to death. Only by the sacrifice of Techmarine Lygus was the Lord defeated. Gathering his forces, Sarpedon led his remaining troops towards the crashed Adeptus Mechanicus ship, where their promised transports were to be awaiting them. Instead, 3 Imperial Fist Thunderhawk gunships deployed upon the surface, while 20 Terminator armored elites teleported onto the planet, led by First Captain Darnath Lysander. He ordered the Soul Drinkers to surrender or be destroyed. Sarpedon replied with the challenge of a personal duel. Despite Sarpedon's warp-enhanced strength, he was tired from earlier fighting and was swiftly beaten. How about you finish the tale of the original Soul Drinkers with their trial, brother?
Yeah, I'll get to that here in a second. But you make it sound like, well, he was tired. It's like the Sanguinius thing. Well, he was tired, that's why he lost. Like, nah, Darnath Lysander's pretty beefy. He's pretty. He's one of the best Imperial Fists ever to wage war.
Though it really didn't help the fact that Sarpedon almost died to the Necron Lord prior, though. Probably didn't.
Right. Okay, let me put it this way anyways, is that if Sarpedon was in his best shape, he still would have lost to Lysander, in my opinion, but it would have taken longer. Let's put it that way.
It would have taken longer and it would have been much closer, I bet.
I think it would have been closer. As opposed to this, he's like, I'll fight you!
Yeah.
Owie!
I'm gonna go down really fast! Well,
Don't
like
worry,
3
guys,
legs
I'm
were
wearing
mangled
down.
already, so that doesn't help.
Yeah. Anyways, the captured Soul Drinkers were brought aboard the ancient and massive starship Phalanx, the mobile fortress monastery of the Imperial Fist chapter. The Imperial Fists intended to prosecute their brother chapter for their apostasy. Though most heretics would never have been granted such an honor, a former scion of Rogel Dorn, the Soul Drinkers would have their day in court, for the Imperial Fists were a chapter of honor. To a fault, in fact. But, anyways, to the Imperial Fists, a trial was more than a mere formality. It was their intention to see every correct procedure and tradition adhered to, so that no one could dare say they did not give the Soul Drinkers every chance to redeem themselves. The Fists had collected evidence of the Soul Drinkers' deeds, including many that had pitted them against the forces of the Imperium, from which the Soul Drinkers had rebelled. When the Soul Drinkers were first brought on board, the Imperial Fist recovered a copy of the Soul Drinkers' so-called Catechism Martial. They acquired this tome from one of the members of the chaplain Ictonius's flock upon the confiscation of his power armor, forcing him to give up the book along with the secrets it contained.
You mean
during the interrogation,
group that was following now Chaos?
Keep that in mind. Okay, I was about to get there. He's technically not following Chaos. He kind of is. He's actually following this other dude, which I'm about to get to in a minute. Now, during the interrogation of Brother Kion by the Imperial Fist Lord Castellan Lucrontus, the Soul Drinkers revealed the chapter's secrets to him. It was discovered that Dionysios, the legendary philosopher soldier and author of the Catechism Martial, still lived, despite evidence that he had died over 6 Terran millennia before. Dionysios had been entered within the adamantium sarcophagus of a mighty dreadnought and hidden within a secret tomb on the world of Salaka. This tomb was built with a series of ingenious traps put into place, ensuring that none save an Astartes would have the skill to discover the secrets contained within. When Dionysius' crypt was discovered by a lone Imperial Fist scout marine, the resurrected soul drinker came willingly and let himself be brought aboard the Phalanx to face his fate alongside his fellow battle brothers. A conclave of space marines, so technically, Actonius isn't really following Chaos. He's following this dude, who happens to be following
Keep
Chaos.
that in mind.
A conclave of space marines was formed to listen to the presented evidence and to pass judgment on the Renegade chapter. This conclave was composed of various Imperial Fist successor chapters, including the representatives from the Crimson Fists, Helen Griffins, and the Iron Knights, as well as other chapters with no connection to the Imperial Fist, such as the Doom Eagles, the Silver Skulls, and the Angels Sanguine. There was also representatives from the Inquisition, as well as a small contingent of Battle Sisters of the Adeptus Sororitas, for some reason, and a tech priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Everybody wanted a piece of this, apparently.
Yeah, everyone wanted to be part of this. Can I come too? No. Why? Or better yet, why? I just kind of wanted to see what's going on. Anyways, Brother Renez, the former captain of the Crimson Fist Second Company, who had been dishonored by the Soul Drinkers on Edemonian 4, after he lost his company standard to them in the combat of that world, was appointed as the Soul Drinkers' prosecutor. Renez had given up his rank and petitioned his chapter master to walk the path of the warrior's pilgrimage, one who wandered the galaxy seeking redemption outside his chapter by looking for an enemy worthy of killing him, so that he could seek redemption in death for his failings. Kind of like a troll slayer, but when Renez heard that the Soul Drinkers had been captured and were to be tried on the Phalanx, he made haste for the Imperial Fist vessel and presented himself before the chapter master Vladimir Hug and petitioned for the right to persecute the Soul Drinkers so that he could regain his honor. The loyal servants of the Imperium...
vengeance here. No. His honor, no vengeance whatsoever.
Oh no, he's pretty pissed.
Yeah.
The loyal servants of the Imperium had gathered to listen to evidence presented against the Soul Drinkers, while Vladimir Pug presided as the Justice Lord of the court. During the trial, evidence was presented by both sides that both defended the Soul Drinkers' actions as well as damned them. Multiple revelations were revealed during the course of the trial, including the fact Sarpedon had not been aware of Dionysius' tomb's existence, or that there were any surviving dreadnoughts from his chapter, as the last one had been believed to have been destroyed 6 millennia earlier. Now, serving as prosecutor, Renez condemned the Soul Drinkers, implicitly implying that they had been corrupted for millennia while under the guidance of Dionysius. He charged that they had long been sworn to the service of the ruinous powers, and had intended to carry out some plot at the Dark God's behest, intended to damage the Imperium. During Renez's presentation of the evidence against the chapter, Sarpedon finally realized that Chaplain Actonius had been manipulating the Soul Drinkers chapter along the path of damnation in order to fulfill some unknown destiny foreseen long before by Dionysius. Next, Commander Gethsemar of the Angel Sanguine chapter called into question the validity of the Soul Drinkers' claims of being a genetic sons of the Primarch Rogel Dorn. The Angel Sanguine had captured a Soul Drinker space marine and extracted his gene seed for medical study to determine whether or not their heresy was a result of corrupted genetics. In the course of the investigation, they were startled to learn that the Soul Drinkers' genetic legacy could not be traced back to the Imperial Fists and Rogel Dorn. And, well, this is where this story starts to get interesting to me, because this doesn't make any sense because of...
The Last Wall Protocol.
Exactly. So, for those of you anyways who haven't listened to our Imperial Fist or our Black Templars or our Crimson Fist boxes, the Last Wall...
Or the War of the Beast.
Yep. Thank you for catching me on that. During the War of the Beast, actually before that anyways, when Dorn broke up all of the Legion into these different chapters, he did put in a protocol at the very end in case they needed to, at some point anyways, become Legion once more. And it was called the Last Wall Protocol. So the aspect is that if something so dire needed to take place that the Last Wall Protocol needed to be established, the Imperial Fist would push the button, and then all the second foundings and all the foundings of the Imperial Fist chapters would literally come together and work as Legion. Now, this has only been done once. And like my brother just so eloquently said anyways, it took place during the War of the Beast. Now, another thing, though, that also mentioned anyways is that, so we know anyways they definitely weren't part of the fourth founding because that took place after the War of the Beast. We can also say anyways that they had to have been part of the Imperial Fist because they were emphatically part of that last wall protocol.
Yeah.
They're actually specifically mentioned. Them, the Black Templars, and I believe the Excoriators. Or the one anyways with Maximus Thane came from.
Fist Exemplar.
Fist Exemplar, yeah. So
also, when the Imperial Fists were almost entirely wiped out, they also had successor chapters give some of their men to rebuild the chapter, and the Soul Drinkers were one of the ones that very willingly gave some of their base brains to it.
And okay, so to give you a little bit of a refresh on what happened during the last protocol, and this actually shows you anyways, the last wall protocol literally is like the last resort. There's a reason why it's only been pushed once. and for that to take place was there was literally only one Imperial Fist dude left. The rest of them had all been killed. Not only that, but an Orc moon was literally like right next to Terra.
Yes.
So it was kind of like, well, the Imperium will get killed by the Orcs or we hit this button. There have been times anyways where it's been almost pressed, but it has not been pressed. This is the only time that it has been pressed. So this is the part anyways that I just don't understand anyways, is that this guy's like, well, we found their gene codes and it turns out they're not even really Imperial Fists. Well, okay, what do you think? Why do you think anyways? Well, I don't think, by the way, I don't think that this Angel Sanguinine dude, Geth Samar anyways, is lying. I don't think he's lying. But what do you think anyways? Why do you think anyways that he said these things?
Here's a weird factoid that I found while doing research concerning this, is that actually there were some thousand sons that were brought into the Imperial Fist. Not many people know about that because,
really,
that's something that, there was.
Were these the loyalists that weren't on Prospero?
There was a fellowship known as the Fifth Fellowship that was able to escape Prospero barely, and then they were brought before Malcador. Malcador found no fault in them basically, and then the majority of them were wiped out during the siege of Cathonia.
Okay.
And so the remnants of them were basically absorbed into the Imperial Fists group that was there.
Interesting. So very well could be anyways that this gene seed that they found anyways was in fact the Thousand Sun. That's what you're kind of getting at here?
Which would kind of leave a little bit of adherence to why they'd also be, if some of these came from the Thousand Sun Legions, that gene seed would be technically tainted enough that maybe that would add a catalyst to them having these defects popping up.
Like growing spider legs.
Yeah. And he just happens to be a Psyker. And, the person who's Guardian just happened to be Psyker Latent.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
that actually could be another wrench here thrown in.
That actually makes a whole lot more sense than what I was thinking. I was thinking the only thing I could think of, because I didn't have that little tidbit of information. Thank you for that, by the way. Is that the gene seed had been so corrupted by chaos by that point you couldn't determine where it came from. That was the only thing I could think of. But that actually makes a whole lot more sense anyways, if they usurped anyways some of the Thousand Sons into their group and they ended up being part of the Soul Drinkers.
Yeah,
that
which
would
kind
make
of
a whole lot more sense.
One of the things of the reasons why the Soul Drinkers were given the Soul Spear was to show, the camaraderie of the Imperial Fist and them being all stood together. If you think about it, that's something that you'd want to do if it was a group that originally wasn't part of the Imperial Fist. This is a show that even though you were 1,000 Sun, you were still part of us.
Right.
But,
So yeah, I mean, quite frankly, that's probably your best bet anyways, as to why anyways
So,
this guy
it could
found
be a flux of there were both Imperial Fist and 1,000 Suns people that were built into the Soul Drinkers, and so some of that, went down the line, and that just happened to be one of the ones that
and it would also make sense
I got
anyways.
hold of.
It sounds something like what Dorn would do anyways, making sure that the 1,000 Fist guys didn't stay with the Imperial Fists. They moved on to a different chapter because these are my boys. Kind of thing. I could definitely see that too, with Dorn doing that. But all of this is kind of beside the point, because during the course of the trial, pilgrims of the Order of the Blinded Eye conspired to help the Soul Drinkers escape their bondage. They had been manipulated by the intricate machinations of Dionysios to help him achieve his mysterious objectives, which, unfortunately, I will still be getting to in a minute. Not questioning their newfound freedom, the surviving Soul Drinkers made their last stand within the Phalanx's Librarium. The forces of the Imperial Fists and their successor chapter brethren converged on the Soul Drinkers' position, and a vicious firefight ensued. The breakout of the Soul Drinkers from their holding cell was merely a distraction, though, as Dionysios used this diversion to carry out the final phase of his meticulous plan. We're finally getting there. His most loyal follower, Chaplain Ectonius, kidnapped Captain Nikilo of the Iron Knights and brought him to his master. Using the blood of the battered Astartes, the genetic code of Rogel Dorn was the key to unlock an infamous wart gate known as the Predator's Eye that was actually hidden within the Imperial Fist Fortress Monastery. Unable to destroy it outright, the Primarch Rogel Dorn had sealed this warp gate nearly 10 millennia before, and had vowed that one day, when the countless other threats had subsided, he and his chapter librarians and other champions would finally destroy the Predator's Eye. From the newly opened warp gate emerged the various foul denizens of the Immaterium, including the master architect of the Soul Drinker's fate, a demon prince of Zinch, the now too familiar Abraxas. Dionysios intended to use Abraxas' power to travel the galaxy, with the Phalanx as his personal chariot, spreading the power of chaos throughout the Emperor's realm. Now, Abraxas would be held to use the warp gate as a doorway into the warp from which would spill the legions of demons under his command. Dionysios wanted to fundamentally transform the Imperium, freeing its people from the shackles of oppression and fear, and installing himself as the new master of all mankind. Abraxas was merely a tool to be manipulated like everything else in the galaxy. In the meantime, Sarpedon had escaped from his captors and reunited with his remaining battle brothers. Leaving them behind to face a glorious death in the Imperial Fist Librarium, Sarpedon sought out the whereabouts of Dionysios, but was waylaid by Ectonius' flock. The small squadron of Soul Drinkers that were with Sarpedon were killed in the carefully executed ambush. Enraged, Sarpedon slew all of Ectonius' followers, and then sought to confront the renegade chaplain himself. As the remaining Soul Drinkers valiantly defended themselves within the ruins of the Phalanx's Librarium, they knew that it was only a matter of time before they were wiped out through attrition. At the height of the vicious battle, the encroaching forces of the Imperial Fist and their allies unexpectedly withdrew their forces. Sensing that something was awry, the Soul Drinkers' captain, Luco, led the remainder of the Battle Brothers out of the Librarium. Monitoring the Imperial Fist Vox track, they soon discovered that Abraxas was leading a massive demonic force that was assailing the Imperial Fist from within their own fortress monastery. They bravely presented themselves before the Imperial Fist chapter master, Vladimir Pug, and begged of him to be given the chance to fight and die by their side against a common enemy that threatened them all. Reluctantly, the Imperial Fists agreed to the Soul Drinkers' request to face the demons, as they understood that this was in itself a death sentence. In the meantime, Sarpedon discovered Ectonius and confronted him in a vicious hand-to-hand battle. Sarpedon was gravely wounded, but not before he managed to subdue the wayward chaplain. Using his innate psychic ability known as the Hell, Sarpedon brutally wrested the information from Ictonius' mind concerning Denathios' true intentions and learned to his dismay what Denathios had planned across the long millennia and how he had been but an unwitting pawn in that ancient game. His task completed, Sarpedon took the mortally wounded chaplain, whose mind had been utterly shattered by his psychic assault, and launched him out an airlock into the void of space. He then made his way... Well, I don't know why he did that, but he did. He could have just shot him or ripped his head off or something. Nope, airlock. He then made his way towards the main bridge of the Phalanx to confront Denathios. Denathios confirmed Sarpedon's suspicions of what his grand scheme for the galaxy would entail. Denathios believed that the Imperium was utterly corrupt and that its people were damned. 6 millennia earlier, Denathios had learned that the Imperium was a dark and savage place, a breeding ground for the desperation that gave the force of chaos the chance to do their wickedness in the material universe.
He has a point. The problem is he sided with the demons, and nothing good can come from that, dear listeners. It always ends badly.
Right you are, Yusin. Right you are.
But getting back to our story, Sarpedon bravely confronted the corrupt Dreadnought in combat, attempting to stop Denathios' mad ambitions from coming to fruition. During the combat that ensued, Sarpedon sustained multiple mortal wounds from the Dreadnought's missiles and storm bolters. The Dreadnought smugly plucked the mortally wounded Chapter Master from the floor with his power fist, intent on crushing Sarpedon to death. The Dreadnought brought the Chapter Master closer so he could get a better view as he brought his victim's life to end. Sarpedon suddenly enacted a desperate plan, reaching into an ammunition pouch that hung from his belt, from which he pulled the Soul Spear. He had reclaimed this ancient archaeotech weapon from Ictonius during their confrontation in the Phalanx's hangar. Using the artifact's deadly vortex field-encased twin blades, Sarpedon whipped the Soul Spear upwards through the heart of Denathios' cybernetic sarcophagus, separating it from the body of the Dreadnought. The pressure on Sarpedon relented as the Dreadnought's power fist fell inactive. Sarpedon freed himself from the power fist and stood before what remained of the Dreadnought's body. The front of the walker had been completely sheared away, revealing the life support cradle in which Denathios had spent the last 6,000 years. Reaching inside, Sarpedon tore away the cabling and wiring and grasped Denathios around what remained of his scrawny neck, pulling him out of the sarcophagus. Sarpedon had a fate in mind that befitted the treachery enacted by Denathios. Meanwhile, Captain Luco and Sergeant Grievous of the Soul Drinkers, along with a small squad of Imperial Fists, Librarian Varnica of the Silver Skulls, and a battle sister of the Sororitas, made their way towards the Predator's Eye in order to close the warp gate and confront Abraxas himself. Along the way, they were waylaid by the demonic horrors of the warp, and many of their number were slain. In a final confrontation, the surviving Astartes and Sister Ascarion managed to overcome the savage demon prince and cast him back through the warp gate. The Predator's Eye slowly sealed itself shut. At the height of the pitched battle between the beleaguered Imperial forces and the massive demonic host, the sudden closing of the warp gate dramatically affected the demonic army. The demons dropped to their knees and began to scream in pain as their link with Abraxas and the Immaterium itself was broken. The Imperial forces quickly took advantage and charged into the ranks of the bewildered demonic horde, cutting them down where they stood. The Imperial defenders drove the demons forward, through the Phalanx's forges and on towards the cargo bays, where the heart of the demonic infestation had been planted. Librarian Varnica, Sister Ascarion, and 2 Soul Drinkers were the only survivors of the great battle to seal the warp gate. When first Captain Lysander arrived to take custody of the Soul Drinkers, and the Soul Drinkers' captain hauled the gravely wounded Grievous over towards the closing portal, the 2 Soul Drinkers knew there was no place left in the galaxy for them, not in the cells of the Phalanx, or in the grip of whatever punishment was decided for them, not even in freedom. The whole galaxy had been set against them for so long that there was nowhere they could go and nothing they could do. They would not hand themselves over to the Imperial Fist custody. The 2 surviving Soul Drinkers stepped through the portal, into the warp, and into whatever fate awaited them there. The portal then closed completely, cutting off the madness of the Immaterium from real space. As the Imperial Fists and the Howling Griffins were killing off the last of the demons running loose from the vessel, Sarpedon made his presence known. The chapter master was near death, wounded, but not defeated. Sarpedon then held up the atrophied remains of Denethios before Chapter Master Pugh and the Imperial Fist and explained that it was he who had brought Abraxas forth from warp. Denethios had been the architect of the Soul Drinker's damnation, manipulating the Soul Drinker's chapter into the destiny he had foreseen. Sarpedon explained that it was because of men like Denethios that innocents suffer, and that he had been a fool for not seeing that Denethios had manipulated him into the role he wanted him to play. He challenged the Imperial Fist to succeed where he had not, and help stem the suffering of mankind, or else do nothing and watch the human race fall. Though moved by his words, Chapter Master Pugh still had to take Sarpedon into custody, but the Soul Drinker's Chapter Master refused. Instead, Sarpedon somehow managed to reopen the warp gate. As Sarpedon stepped towards the portal, Denethios grew fearful of his fate within the realm of chaos and screamed in terror, for the dark gods were unkind to those of their servants who failed. Sarpedon stepped over the threshold and into the portal, dragging the screaming philosopher soldier into the warp and out of reality. The portal then slammed shut behind them. Despite everything that had passed between them, the Imperial Fist recognized the sacrifice of the Soul Drinkers and had their names chiseled on vast stone columns within their apothecarium. One column bore the names of the Imperial Fists who had died in the valiant defense of the Phalanx, whilst alongside it, another column bore the names of the Soul Drinkers, listing them as brothers in death. The Soul Drinkers were no more, but not their legacy, for their tale would serve as a caution to all those who do not see that the hand of chaos is ever present and ever ready to lead humanity to its unwitting damnation. Well, technically, it's not the end of the Soul Drinkers, is it? Because Gilliman will have his say about this in the Era Indominus, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you.
In the Era Indominus, as the galaxy reeled from the events following the destruction of Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade and the subsequent formation of the galaxy-wide tear in reality known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Soul Drinkers were among the chapters refounded by order of the resurrected Ultramarines Primarch Robute Gilliman. Formed entirely of Primaris Space Marines, the newly reconstituted chapter was designed to carry the name of the once legendary force that had been long forgotten by much of the Imperium due to the fall from grace and subsequent Edict of Obliteration issued by the High Lords of Terra to erase all records of the corrupted chapter's existence. Unlike their forebears, these new Soul Drinkers had no clear understanding of the dark history that clouded the chapter's past. They were given little information about the reasons for their predecessors' fall, and were instead led to believe that their origins were noble, honorable, and steeped in glorious service to the Emperor. Eager to prove themselves worthy of the name they carried, the reborn Soul Drinkers fought with zeal and determination. One of their earliest and most significant engagements took place during the Keprian Reclamation, a campaign to reclaim the isolated imperial world of Kepris that fell to the Chaos Cult forces of the arch-heretic Yesekath, the so-called Voice of All, early in the Era Indominus. As this world was home to a collection of sacred relics of the Ecclesiarchy, the Indominus Crusade deemed it necessary to reclaim the planet from the forces of chaos. This task fell to the reborn Soul Drinkers Captain Koya and his third company, who would go on to play a pivotal role in securing a much-needed psychological victory for the Imperium. Unfortunately, in the wake of the Keprian Reclamation, the chapter's methods, which bordered on the unorthodox, drew the ire of the Inquisition. This confrontation led to the revelation that the original Soul Drinkers had been declared traitors to the Imperium, their legacy deliberately erased from most historical records. It became clear that the chapter's name was one marred by heresy and betrayal, and the new Soul Drinkers were now burdened with a legacy they had not expected. This discovery sowed the seeds of doubt and uncertainty among the chapter's battle brothers. For Primaris Space Marines, who were bred for loyalty and service to the Emperor, the revelation that they were carrying the name of traitors brought about a deep existential crisis. The knowledge that their heritage had been intentionally forgotten by the Imperium made them question their own identity and purpose. Despite these doubts, the Soul Drinkers continued to fight with renewed determination, but with the weight of their uncertain legacy hanging over them. Whether they can escape the shadow of their predecessors or inevitably fall victim to the same path of heresy remains to be seen. As the resurrected Soul Drinkers embark on new campaigns, they continue to wrestle with their past and their future, seeking redemption for the sins of their namesakes, while striving to carve out a new identity in the dark age of their Indominus.
And there you have it, folks. The Soul Drinkers.
Okay, I do have to ask this. Who thought it'd be a good idea of reintroducing it and thinking that Soul Drinkers would be a wonderful name for a loyalist group?
Ironically, okay, so this is another reason why I think they are probably part of the second founding. Because Gilman, if I recall, is the guy who restarted the Soul Drinkers, right?
Yes.
So back in the day, anyways, I mean, Gilman was during the time, anyways, of, the Great Scouring and the second founding. I don't think he was still around during the third founding, though.
Well, when the third
during
founding,
the second founding, where they're just like, well, we need to make another Primaris chapter, this is Dorn's stock, what should we do? It's like, well, I guess the Soul Drinkers aren't around anymore, but they were pretty cool back in the day. Why don't we just reload them up? So I'm thinking, anyways, Gilman probably didn't know about all the, Sapadon and his 8 legs. And
well, no, because he was entombed at the time. That didn't happen until the 41st millennium.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that he probably didn't know all about that anyways, wasn't read into it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, I mean, I could definitely very well see anyways Gilman being the guy going, yeah, I remember those guys. Too bad, I guess they're gone. Let's redo them.
Or now that we have some of them, let's just keep them as they are.
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your question anyways, I bet it was, Gilman probably didn't even think about it. He was just like, yeah, I remember the Soul Drinkers. They're pretty cool, although they did wear purple, much like the Emperor's children, who I can't stand, but... Well, before we take off anyways, what do you think, now that we've finally gone through the Soul Drinkers, what do you think of the Soul Drinkers? And not the new guys. The new Primaris Space Marines, they're just the new guys in the block. There's not a whole lot on them other than they're depressed that their name comes with a whole bunch of baggage with it. But I mean,
you should just randomly have somebody come out and go, "Hey, look at the corpse of Krieg. Take their viewpoint and attitude. Why don't you?" They're going through the same sort of baggage.
Don't do that.
You know what? Do you see them in existential crisis? No. So suck it up. You're a Space Marine, man.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about the old school ones, the second founding. So first off, anyways, do you think they were a second or a third founding?
I think they were a second.
I agree with you. I'm inclined to think that they were definitely a second.
Especially with me finding out about the Thousand Suns being
right
brought in.
Well, what do you think about him? Sarpedon and his boys. Tootling around in a space hole.
I may want to reread the book that I read and the other books around it.
Okay. Well, the original, the tomes, anyways. Who's the scholar that originally did the omnibuses?
Ben Counter.
Oh, well, he's not bad.
Yeah.
But like I said, anyways, what do you think of these guys?
I think they are a tragic chapter that was royally screwed over.
I think they definitely were royally screwed over, but I think anyways, the longer they stayed away from the Imperium, I think the more vicious they got.
Well, two reasons for that. One is because the Imperium was out to get them, so...
Right. Well, no, I mean, it's definitely, I think it's definitely a cause and effect.
Yeah.
But I mean, I definitely can see anyways, like Renez anyways having a huge beef with him. I can definitely understand that.
Oh, yeah.
I can definitely see
They
why he
beat
would want
us.
to call
They
traitors.
beat us and they took my standard.
Same with the Howling Griffins, kind of thing. Especially more with the Howling Griffins, quite frankly. Well, Renez, the thing about Renez is that, I mean, quite frankly, the first soul drinkers that he comes into contact really are Chaos born.
Yeah.
They're Teleos' guys. So, I mean, I'm guessing anyways when Sepidon shows up, there isn't a whole lot of trying to explain himself or anything like that either, though. It's like as soon as he gets attacked by the Crimson Fist, he turns around and just starts murdering him. Because, like I said,
we're under attack. We gotta defend ourselves. And oh look, this person's trying to attack me. I guess I'm gonna have to kill them.
Well, you say that, but at the same time, the way that they got on was they stole some Navy ships. So, like I said, they're not. I don't think they're the greatest guys out there.
I think they fit really well into the renegade part.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I would say, anyways. Definitely, I would think of them as renegades.
Yes.
They're not really good guys. They're not really bad guys. They're out there. Well, on that note, we are out of time for today. Join us next time for kind of a special thing, anyways, where we talk about the Planconius Wars. Next week, we will be talking about the invasion of Oxidine by Big Boss Bob Big Tooth and his orcs of Warg Big Tooth.
Fantastic. But for those of you who enjoyed our little show, could you please be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button? If you wish to help us expand our work on 40k lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program, our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka. Oh, and don't forget to purchase the Jotunheist, spelled with a J. Sold wherever ebooks are sold.
Yes, but most importantly, have a great day. And
until next time, this is Ekthar,
And Yuxin.
signing off.